Hello, Lyssa here. One of the questions that I often get from coaches is one around the core competency of establishing and maintaining agreements. I think for a lot of coaches, we understand the need for the comprehensive goal of what is the work that we're working on with a client. And so we're much better at having a clarity around what is our agreement for the work that we're going to do. We have contracts that we send out to prospective clients, and when they sign and return, we now have a sense of the parameters of our relationship in the sense of how often we're meeting, when we're meeting, how many times will we be meeting, and we're already starting that process of getting clarity around what are the goals for this interaction that we're about to undertake. And so that is one way that we create agreements and establish and maintain them, is that we have them to begin with. We're also, during that early stages of our coaching relationship, developing some clarity around what coaching is and also what coaching is not, and what's being offered, what isn't being offered, and all of those things. So, and we get a sense of, ultimately, is this somebody who I resonate with, and is this somebody who I want to work with, for both the client and the coach. I have at times had client discovery sessions only to realize I'm not a good match for this person that I'm talking to. And so it's an opportunity for me to refer the client on to somebody else who might be a better fit for them, or to bow out if I don't have a good resource for the client, that this doesn't seem like I'm going to be the best fit, and help them on their journey in some other way. So when we're thinking then about establishing and maintaining agreement in the overarching coaching relationship, that's one thing. I think one of the pieces that's really important to understand, and I talk a little bit about it in the other video around the coaching container of a conversation, is that within each conversation that we have with a client, we are also setting agreements about what is important to the client. Why is that important thing showing up? What's driving that for them in the moment? And then we're also establishing a linkage between establishing and maintaining agreements within the conversation to what the client wants as an outcome, not in the overarching coaching relationship. That's the bigger agreement setting that we're doing, but within the conversation, what would make this a useful conversation? And this is where coaching ends up taking a bit of an art form, because we have a structure of creating an agreement, and we also have the linkage towards what the client wants to get from the conversation that we're about to have. But it is the coach's capacity to be curious and have their questions be informed by where their curiosity is showing up, that supports the clients really starting to get more of a 360-degree view around the topic that they're bringing forward into the coaching conversation. What is important about it? What is driving that importance? What are the real indicators that the client wants to be paying attention to, and how will that benefit them by the end of the conversation to have had that conversation? So a big part of establishing and maintaining agreements is around, how do we as the coach hold this space? And bringing our curiosity forward is a huge piece of it. I think there's also a piece around the difference between important and interesting when it comes to questions. We're always having curiosity around the client's relationship to the situation, and not specifically about the situation. So part of this agreement setting is the client comes and says, maybe I want to lose weight, so I want to talk about why I'm not exercising enough. That maybe is sort of what's important to them in the moment. What is driving this as an important thing? Well, I'm noticing that I'm not following through with agreements to myself. What about that would be useful for us to have a conversation about today? Well, what is stopping me from holding myself accountable to what I say is important? okay, now we have a much deeper issue that's probably far more important than what are you doing right now to lose weight? What have you not tried? Now that is all situational versus what's driving this even being a concern of yours. It is the difference between interesting and important. And I think that's really crucial when we're thinking about how we establish and maintain agreements. If what we're doing is a superficial job of coming up with the superficial pieces of the topic to have a conversation about with our clients, we don't invite them below the waterline. And we all hear the iceberg theory. We know that the tip of the iceberg really just demonstrates the behaviors that are showing up that we can all see. We also have, I've seen so many little memes about this, but we all know that what drives those behaviors lies below the waterline. So it's imperative that a coach get curious about what those drivers are, takes it below the waterline so that you can have the conversation about the things that are really motivating or demotivating your client to take the actions necessary to reach whatever their goal is. So establishing and maintaining agreements is much more than just a superficial clarity. It is really about getting curious at a very deep level about what is important to your client, what is meaningful, and what is driving the behaviors that they want to see and they want to maybe change or shift. So I hope this is useful as you start to think about agreement setting and how you go about establishing and maintaining the agreement through a conversation. Again, just quickly, really having clarity around what's important and meaningful to the client, where they would want to get to by the end of the conversation, the difference between important and interesting. One other piece, I think another piece of maintaining agreements comes with touching base with the client through the conversation. How are we doing on moving towards whatever the client said, X? How are we doing on moving towards X? Well, I feel like we're doing pretty good, but there's still something missing. What's the piece that's missing that we haven't explored? We're allowing the client to also lead us through this experience that they want to have and get curious about the things that they want to get curious about. So as ever, thank you for watching one of these videos. Please feel free to subscribe below, and also write in your comments below if you have any questions that you would love to have my 2 cents around, and I look forward to catching you in another video.